Hello, comrades, and welcome to another episode of my Crisis in the Kremlin Let's Play. Now, I really do think this should, clicking that button should show you the saves, rather than just loading right in. But, I'm here. The year is 1991, a missed opportunity to, do a joint mission to the moon with the Chinese, because relations weren't high enough. My options in intervention Yugoslavia were more limited because probably cooperation with the West foreign policy at the time, maybe also because of the mutual aid instead of free aid policy. This probably allows more active intervention. I wonder what these probably cause the revolution level to increase faster. Right. Sorry, people are being obnoxiously loud downstairs. Sound carriers. I wish they, all hours, day and night, they're loud, and then I have to deal with somebody at my apartment who's like, yell me, oh, you rich people to rush me about playing my music. It's like, people do that in the middle of the night. It's not because of weird sleep cycles I keep sometimes. They do that at 2 a.m. sometimes. It's lack of consideration, and I just, kindly ask people. Yeah, but this guy is a real bastard who has gotten aggressively in my face and a bully at the very least. It's ironic because he's the one engaging in outright unacceptable behavior, and he's getting away with it because can't do anything because I am stuck in a housing situation that's kind of tenuous, which is something that happens when you're desperately poor because you're disabled, and the system in the West, and with the United States, does not provide proper support for disabled, finds excuses to cheat people out of SSDI, such as a rule designed in the mid-90s that made work for a university while you're a student, even if you're after the age of 21, so either an older college student or you're a graduate student, not earn work credits. And then set the scaling on work credits to max out at like 30, 31 instead of later in life, so young people get disabled, get really screwed, as I did. Long COVID. I have to keep an eye on Tunisia. But I still haven't gotten many negative events here, so I am going to run a quote. I call it a tighter ship, but basically all resources to the World Revolution. Taking slight risks here. Bringing up resources, though, for influence abroad. This is going to cause a higher incidence of disloyalty events, but why is this always off, the autofill reserves? It'll allow me to solidify socialism around the globe. Let's see. Mozambique and Tanzania really use the development. Where else? Ghana is a little high on. Just give them a little military aid. And heck, global resource extraction, maybe. Because I'm just trying to calibrate to exactly what I need to maintain stability of the systems. Algeria. We can stabilize, actually. Boom. Mozambique. And Tanzania. Alright. Boom. Resource extraction, Tanzania. Everything is carefully calibrated. Do a lot of military aid just to get budget that's not too negative. Shoot, I need to grab a little more in the way of resources. What? No, don't want to cut that further. Trim diplomatic missions. I should trim infrastructure at this point. Which, boom. Little tight with the US and coexistence foreign policy and all that military aid should aggravate them. China's 50. Friendship, 45 for the US. It's just over 400, which is what I need for most events, though. 66 to spend now. Let's see. Any revolutions pending in Latin America? Argentina or Suriname, maybe. Slowly taking that way. At some point I have to go to Burundi and support a revolution actively, because I invested heavily in the development of that country, same as Zambia. Some countries, these constitutional monarchies, don't seem to gain revolution level hardly at all, at least under coexistence, because it's a traditional form of government. They haven't advanced to capitalism yet, they're essentially feudalism. Which under Marxist theory, is actually in some ways more stable, although more oppressive than capitalism. Okay. This game was made by people who design things from a Marxist theoretical standpoint. Angola needs some aid. Central African Republic, yeah, it's high development, so I invest in that. This is Niger. Mali. right. Kind of not fully developed. It's not too risky to closely calibrate this. Since development so high, disapproval should only very slowly tick up. Won't risk. Boom. Boom. Just finish developing out. It's fine. So yeah, I created a fairly oppressive, regime here in order that I could slacken things in response to protest demands. Using political power to save money on envelopes to public leaders. Bribery to politicians, basically, which feeds corruption if it's more in a small symbolic amount, although I'm already well below that amount, and police budget, social spending, stuff like that. The idea is, of course, to cause the domestic population so we need to have some pain so the world revolution can be accelerated. The second phase of the country. Okay. Can't appoint a Trotskyite. Pragmatist is probably the right choice. Taking off again. Pragmatic economist, business executive manager, a man of crystal honesty who uses personal money to buy buses for schools and pioneer camps. How do you get the money for buses? I mean, I know government salaries were higher, but it says executive manager, so yeah. The Soviet Union worked under the idea of getting rid of unearned income, so there were no stockholders siphoning off huge amounts of money as profit or business owners. But, managers and executives and politicians were still paid better than the rest of the population. They still worked on the principle of incentives. It wasn't everyone is equal. That's a blatant misrepresentation of socialism. Where is the slogan of communism? Not as in communist movements, but as in the late stage of socialism that they aim to achieve. Marx wrote that it would eventually reach from each according to his ability to each according to his means. That would be the utopia, maybe hundreds of years down the line. Socialism, the lower stage of socialism, what socialists, whether it's Marxist-Leninists or just democratic socialist Marxists such as myself, always argue for, is from each according to their work to each according to their work. That is, people are paid based on the work they do, and there's no boss who basically steals a part of your paycheck to pay himself an excessive salary, or especially no stockholder. Think about the stock market, or let's say someone has a privately owned bank and the bank lends out money. They're collecting interest for having capital. They may have bank managers, they may do no work themselves, but they just get money for having that. Or, they own stocks in a corporation that's publicly traded. Corporate bonds or government bonds. Basically, they just get money for having money. And socialists argue that has to be abolished entirely. And businesses should be under the control of workers. And then workers paid higher wages. Of course, what the Soviet Union actually did was still ran businesses at, quote, a profit principle, which might be considered the Lieberman reforms in this game. And instead, the profits were essentially like taxes that went to the government budget, and actual taxes were very low. Hence why it's like 4-6% in this game, because most of the taxes people paid was their businesses being run at profit. But this is economically inefficient because it leads to labor not being prized enough. Workers are still paid less than the value of their work, and underinvestment in automation, which is why they should have instead paid workers the full value of their work and just had higher taxes in the Soviet Union. Actual Marxist economists of principle have argued this, as opposed to people who just go along with the dogma, or capitalist ideologues who say, oh, Marxism, socialism doesn't work, all this bullshit. Anyone who takes an honest critical analysis at things like how much does labor cost, how much will you invest in automation, and looks at things based on facts instead of just ideology first, comes to the conclusion it was a mistake, but not because socialism can't work, but because this was not the right way to do socialism, and it wasn't even loyal to actually the ideological principles of socialism, even though Marxist-Leninists will defend it to death because many think everything the Soviet Union did was perfect. No, this is one of the mistakes. Profit principle had no place in business, even if the government owned the businesses. And in this game, it might be considered that that's... I mean, historically, the Soviet Union made partial use of the Lieberman reforms. Give me a sec to double check this. Yeah, they were partially implemented historically. And unfortunately, one of the things that stayed around was the profitability principle. After they were implemented, businesses' revenues in excess of expenses would go to three funds. One, to, and by expenses, I don't mean labor expenses, I mean like materials, facilities. One, to pay workers. Two, to expand operations, a capital reinvestment fund, like any capitalist corporation has one of those, actually. Although more and more they just do stock buybacks and then later sell stock when they want to raise money for that. But that's a common thing even in the capitalist world. And money that would go to the central budget, whereas in capitalism, that money would go to shareholders. It's essentially imitating the way the capitalist businesses structured themselves. And it didn't work. I mean, there's ideologues who try to add everything from the Wikipedia articles to, you know, think tank articles, bullshit. They try to argue, oh, it was great because it moved the Soviet Union in a capitalist direction. Capitalism was the epitome of economic growth. But historically, the Soviet Union's long-term GDP growth rate, GDP per capita growth rate, per capita because the US had a lot of immigration, which is always going to lead to higher GDP growth rate, even if the system is failing people and it's only fueled by the raw number of people. But the GDP per capita long-term growth rate was higher in the US. And these reforms produced an initial sugar highs, many things that moved towards capitalism, or under capitalism, say, cutting taxes and cutting services like it's now having Trump. Moving towards more neoliberal economies always produces a short-term economic growth, but long-term it slows down economic growth, so it steals growth from 10, 20 years down the line and pulls into the next 4 to 5 years kind of thing. And that's what happened with the cost-of-living reforms, also known as Lieberman's reforms in this game. And indeed, if you look at the actual people written down with the effects in the game, they're actually problematic in some ways. They weaken agriculture, that do lead to greater focus on light industry. They lead to a more capitalist economy model, which leads to higher corruption in the game. Anyways, and higher mind liberalization. Nikolai Alexandrovich Tikhonov, the head of the Soviet government, anyways, he does not particularly interfere in politics, but always defends his own actions, even in the face of the ruler. He's ready to forget about his own pension and continue to serve the Soviet state. Wait, why do the Trotskyites keep getting banned? I would have sworn I legalized them before. Whew, 33% of the support. Whew. I swear I didn't ban them. And why is Romanov still the second secretary? I thought I replaced him with Tikhonov. Maybe it takes a turn to take effect. Yeah, the Trotskyites make the ultra-left coalition stronger. All in all.